Hi, and welcome to my Spanish classes. My name is Kevin. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I offer online classes, all levels. We can study grammar, writing, reading, listening, speaking, vocabulary. Pretty much anything you will need to learn Spanish. I have my own study material, which would be a course or method to have a global knowledge that is designed with the idea that the student can acquire all the basic and essential knowledge possible, but at the same time also offering elements of an advanced and complete learning. That is, in this study material, we won't just cover the really basic elements and nothing more. Instead, we'll try to cover much more so that the student can have the most complete foundation possible. The idea is that with this global course or method, the student will have a good basic knowledge of Spanish so that they can then continue studying with other materials and also what they've learned in the method, such as formulas or any essential knowledge covered in it, can be useful for that. This happens because ultimately there are a certain number of Spanish topics, such as verb tenses or any grammar topic, and they are basically repeated in one way or another, going through different levels with different study materials. But the topics most times remain the same at its core, since the key point of each topic would have been seen already. For example, future is basically about will and going to, used to talk about future actions, etc. The same with any other topic. The essence of those 50-something topics, if you will, approximately, is most times very simple. And as we say, it's topics that repeat many times, just escalating through levels, adding new words, longer sentences or texts, etc. Yet again, the core is just some simple concept and or formula. This is what happens in most, if not all, Spanish grammar books, and is the way in which academies, courses, universities structure their classes, going through levels, repeating those 50-something topics with variations. Basically, the goal is for the student to become familiar with the elements that make up the language, and with that, progress through the levels. That's why, with my method, the idea is that the student can have that key knowledge, even referential, to continue studying with any material, and if necessary, consult formulas or any of those theoretical references. Besides, once the course is completed, they would have a basic or intermediate level of Spanish. We can also study with any other book or material of your choice, or combine them according to each student's needs. Of course, upon completing the ABC method, we would continue with other materials, advancing through the levels, and continuing the study and practice. What I can tell you about this is that there are many study materials and they're all useful. It's just a matter of practicing and acquiring the habit of studying and using Spanish until it becomes easier and more natural to speak it. And then, of course, it depends on the level each person wants to achieve with the language. Also, as a fundamental point, I'd like to tell you that the idea is for students to acquire study tools, resources, and concepts in class which can be very useful and help the student acquire much faster and in a more entertaining way lots of practice in Spanish. What is this? Simple. For example, learning about online translators, an essential resource for students to translate a text, look up a word in an online dictionary, check conjugations, etc. Or also knowing how to generate a study resource from something simple like a text, audio, or video of the everyday, and, for example, creating an exercise from it. Whether it involves translating, transcribing, adding vocabulary, creating different exercises, etc. This exercise, for example, we could say is as effective as many other written typical materials, or many times probably even more, or much more, because you would be starting to mimic what a native does, speaking or writing or reading or listening the language as much as you want. You can find some of these resources on my pages as study tips and concepts. These are things I also mention from time to time in the demo classes. So this is just one example of how a simple exercise with an everyday material switch to Spanish can be a great practice and be something that can add up lots of knowledge and level to the student. I mention this because sometimes perhaps these things, if not mentioned, how useful they are, might just go overlooked or considered just another exercise. Yet their potential as a study resource is, as we said, just a great and almost endless source for practicing anytime you want. And also for you to know about the profile and criteria in my classes, let you know how we try and sort the study repertoire, also practical and maybe also entertaining or easygoing resources we can find. In this way, the idea is that the student can have a basic level, very complete study material with intermediate or advanced elements that can serve as a reference for any future studies, as well as tools like those we mentioned and concepts, as we also mentioned, about learning a language, to try to find the easiest and most efficient way to learn it. What I can tell you is that the ideal is to try to be integrative and look for a balance. That is, neither concentrating too much on theory or formulas or exercises that can become schematic at a certain point, nor starting from class 1 trying to listen to native speakers in a constant dialogue and looking up the words in an online translator. Therefore, I want to transmit and explain to you that the ideal is undoubtedly to do something integrative, that is, that has a little bit of everything of each study material, and as we said, fundamentally also that the student can understand that learning Spanish is not really rocket science, that expecting to speak at a high level in just a few months is not very realistic, for example, too, etc., etc. It's about, as we said, simply knowing the elements of the language and studying them, gradually combining them with the different materials and resources available for learning Spanish, as we said, from a grammar book to any everyday multimedia material, going through the levels. The classes would be via audio call. Let me briefly explain why. Communication via audio alone provides us with clearer and faster communication than video calls. In video calls, the audio quality is often automatically reduced by the application itself. The reason is basically this: quality and speed of communication. Otherwise, the class would lose that essential aspect. This happens because of the equipment and internet connections. Some might be suitable for a video class, but as an instructor, it's difficult for me to check this with each student, which is why I prefer to just go with the audio call option. Anyway, it's not like we need the video for much. What I can tell you is that the audio call actually works very well. You can really tell the difference in quality and speed of an audio call, especially if you don't have a fast computer or internet connection. Also, the ideal would be to work with a notebook or PC, and from there you could see the study material, whether in text, audio, or video. We would study by sharing the files online in real time so we could complete exercises and view them at the same time. And you could also communicate from the same computer. Just make sure you can achieve a consistent connection and speed, and if necessary, you could consider getting a microphone or speakers. I'd also like to add that I'm bilingual, certified, practically at a native level in both languages, since I've spoken English and Spanish practically my entire life, with more than 10 years of study, international exams, trips to the USA and Canada, a regular practice of English through different elements, and with Spanish in everyday life, of course. Classes include chat support between classes for questions about your studies. The standard time is usually 1 hour per week, but this can be combined depending on the student. Classes can also sometimes be extended for a few minutes. The prices are accessible, so don't hesitate to contact me. Also, if you have any other questions. For more information or to arrange a class, you can write to me through this page or by any other means you prefer. You can visit my Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages. You'll find them as Spanish Lessons Online ABC. Greetings to you all.